Hello there, bright light. You have just entered the new era of consciousness. Welcome to Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor, where each week we help you become a one with the rhythm by stepping into your potential, by embodying your inner phenomenal leader and taking the lead of yourself and in your own life. My name is Angilie Kapoor. I am a career and conscious leadership coach, a multi-book author, inspirational speaker, as well as your host. I'm also the founder of my leadership coaching company, Oversight Global, where we are on a mission to address the consciousness crisis in the world, one leader at a time. Now, today we have another fabulous guest, and I am super excited at what we'll be exploring in our discussion today, which will be on the art of co empowerment in cultivating strong relationships. Now, today we're going to explore the different ways in which relationships can either support or hinder your leadership potential and provide practical tools for creating meaningful connections and fostering trust. Now, I know this is something you can also relate, so we're actually going to jump right into it straight away. Okay, so the premise of this show, Take the Lead, a consciousness movement, is to help you recognize and embody what I call your inner phenomenal leader, your true, authentic self that you are truly meant to be. To help you uncover the power that you have within, to step into your potential and contribute to the world as only you uniquely can. Now, to do this in a fun way on this show, we look at the parallels of couple dancing, like salsa and ballroom dancing, with leadership development to help you become the leader of yourself and in your own life. Now, like I mentioned, today we're going to be discussing and exploring the art of co empowerment and cultivating strong relationships. So, salsa, ballroom, and couple dancing all have parallels with leadership in this context of co empowerment and cultivating strong relationships. So, just like in dancing, leadership requires a clear understanding of your partner's strengths, weaknesses, and preferred styles. Now, one must learn how to communicate effectively, trust each other, and work together to achieve a common goal. In the same way, leadership fosters an environment of mutual respect and trust among different people. When relationships are strong, it becomes easier to create a culture of collaboration and creativity, all of which are essential for effective leadership. On the other hand, if relationships are not nurtured, they can easily become a hindrance to productivity, creativity, as well as progress. So, in summary, just as in dancing, strong relationships are crucial for successful leadership, and it is essential to identify strategies that promote co empowerment and build strong relationships among the members of your group, your team, and your family, and everybody else. So, and with that, what are your thoughts or questions on my monologue today? Let me know by emailing us at admin@oversightglobal.com. Now, that, folks, was our new commercial for our newly redesigned speaker website. Pretty cool, right? I'm super excited that it is finally up, so be sure to go and check it out. It's at www.angeliekapoor.com. And let me know what you think about it, will you? Okay, so let's get to our guest spotlight. Now, the Soulmate Alchemist, Cassandra Thea, on the show today to again help us explore the art of co empowerment in cultivating strong relationships and the different ways in which relationships can either support or hinder our leadership potential. So, with her extensive experience as a strategy consultant, entrepreneur, Tantra teacher, psychotherapist, coach, and master healer, Cassandra has helped countless individuals transform their personal and professional relationships from self sacrifice and perfectionism to co empowerment and deep satisfaction. So, Cassandra's clients have called working with her a crash course in high functioning relationships where they experience more relational growth in 6 weeks than they've had in their entire lives. Many credit their success to Cassandra's teachings, making her graduates some of the most in demand partners and leaders out there. So, phenomenal leaders, please help me welcome to the show the fabulous soulmate alchemist herself, Cassandra De La Thea. Cassandra, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how excited I am for our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Angilie. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, before I forget, we will periodically be displaying Cassandra's contact information below. So, if at any time you feel called to check out some more information on what she does and how she may be able to help you, be sure to go to that web address and connect with her. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. I know I'm super excited to talk about this. So, we've already kind of had a discussion about relationships and really creating co-empowerment in them, because that is what a majority of relationships out there are really missing. So can you tell us like what we mean when we're saying co-empowerment in relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like the most central piece because, there's relationships that can be played at certain, at different kind of levels, right? Like there's the
Mhm.
codependent game, right? Which is where
Right.
if we haven't had any training or we haven't gotten like a kind of a better way, that tends to be where we are by default. That's often what
Right.
we've seen our parents, our friends do, etc. Co-empowerment is almost like now suddenly we're ready to kind of like play in the Super Bowl or we're ready to play Champions League. It's a kind of a different level and it's the rules of the game are quite different. So and the
Mhm.
prerequisite for co-empowerment is that both people in the relationship need to have their power, right?
Mhm.
So that's almost like it's a prerequisite. Like you show up at the casino, you need to bring some chips into the game, right? If you want to play. So you have to have your own power and allow the other person to have their own power as well. And that sounds really simple, right? It's just like, yeah, of course I do. But it's like, especially like so many, especially like female leaders,
Mhm.
and the feminine principle, like there's so many of us who are really strong in the nurturing paradigm, like who are
Right.
really strong in the, what I call lovingly my overgivers and my overachievers, right? Like those kind
Mhm.
of beautiful perfectionists that is like, always wanting to get it right. And those kind of people, the kind of the empaths that always know what everybody else needs and always try to meet other people's needs whilst kind of forgetting about their own needs. And these are like some very big percentages, I would say,
Right.
are made up, especially of kind of like successful leaders are often the net contributors in life. And so,
Mhm.
sometimes you can say, okay, they might fall a little bit in there's this beautiful kind of psychological model, that kind of the victim triangle where you've got three roles that people take in relationships. That's in the codependent paradigm. You've got people who are either like a rescuer, a
Right.
persecutor, or a victim,
Right.
right? And so, if you are an overgiver or an overachiever, which means you always take more than your fair share of the work, that often kind of falls into that rescuer paradigm. And when
Mhm.
you're going into that more rescuer kind of way, like you're automatically pushing people or inviting them very strongly, like you're leading them to either step into their victim or into their persecutor. That's the
Right.
beauty about the leading. Like, when we are stepping into rescue, which is a codependent role to take, we're
Mhm.
leading people into that codependent paradigm. And we're therefore strongly inviting them to dance with us, either like in a victim or in a kind of persecutor role.
Right.
And on the other hand, if we do co-empowerment, like we step into more of a role of what I would call for women, like a kind of a queen archetype or a king archetype, which
Mhm.
is we step into our own power, but we also leave space for the other person to to have their own power. We're not rescuing. We're being clear with what we're requiring, what we're requesting, and we're leaving space for the other person to step into their power towards us rather than filling all the space with what we're contributing.
Right, right. Yeah, I remember the victim triangle very well. It was something that, when I was back in healthcare management, we were given and we were explained this is not the type of relationships that you want, right? But nobody ever told us, like, okay, that's great. I recognize that. But how do I get the relationships that I want? And so, I always found myself whenever I had a staff person come into my office and I was like, okay, they're playing victim right now. So, how do I get them out of this, kind of mode? And so I feel like that piece was always really missing is, the actual implementation part of how you get from being the nurturer of, these people taking on these kind of codependent relationships into where you are creating empowerment, co-empowerment into your relationship. So can you kind of speak on that, on how, I am sure there are tons of people watching right now that are like, yes, I have that type of relationship, but same thing, I don't know how to get out of it.
It's a fantastic question. And I really love your kind of dance analogy with the leadership. Like I absolutely totally agree with that. And it's like imagine like, you're there in a dance couple and like one person is like dancing a tango. Like the
Yeah.
music is a waltz, but they're dancing a tango. Now,
Hmm.
if you're being pulled along with that, suddenly you're in a tango,
Right.
right? But if you stand there and you don't move, at some point it's not really possible for this person, let's say this person is dancing the tango, is the victim dance. They're
Hmm.
trying to pull you into the victim dance. If you don't actually move in those steps, so you don't go into like the two polarities, if someone steps into victim, they're inviting you to
Hmm.
say, hey, either come and feel sorry for me and take care of me and make it better for me because I'm so sad and I'm so hopeless and I'm so helpless, and if you come and rescue me, you're going to feel a lot better about yourself.
Right.
That's one invitation. Or the other invitation is like, oh, is persecute me. It's like, oh, look, I'm so weak. I make so many mistakes. Like, there's nothing I can do. Like, make me wrong. Make me
Hmm.
wrong so I can be strong in this. These are the two invitations.
Right.
And how do you stop empowering like someone in this triangle is you do not follow either of those invitations. You
Mm.
don't step in to rescue and try to make them feel better. And you don't step in to try and show them how they're wrong for what they're feeling.
Right.
Those are the two paths. If you choose either of those, you're in this tango and you're off. Right. So that's
And
how
you
it goes.
can't stop it.
So the only way to stop it is to actually stop. You don't follow any of those invitations because as soon as you do something other than rescue or persecute,
Hmm.
if you do something other, you're changing the music, you're changing the dance. And that's what you need to do if you want to take it away from that codependent place, away from that kind of victim, rescue, persecutor place. You want to move it to a different place. And
Right.
so, like, on a very practical level, you have to check what you believe about that person, right? Because beliefs are
Mhm.
kind of like something that we can kind of change a little bit by changing
Right.
our
Right.
perspective about something. So, and
Mhm.
we all have a natural pull either more to the rescuer or more to the persecutor. Like, are we more like people who make others wrong, or are we more people who kind of feel sorry for them, try to save them from themselves, right?
Right. Right.
And so look at this person. It's like, what do you believe about them? And if you believe that they have no power, right? If they have no power, then
Mhm.
suddenly you're in the codependent place. You
Mm,
have
okay.
to get out of this, you have to actually see and really believe and see how this person has power even in the place that they're in,
Mhm. Right.
right? Like where do they have power for their situation?
Mhm.
And when you see that they have power and therefore there's something also they're gaining from this role, like each of those roles there's a payoff for each of those roles,
Mm,
right?
okay.
Like as a rescuer, you tend to feel morally superior. You feel like a really good person,
Right.
right? Like that's the
Right, yeah.
payoff, right? And as a victim, you get a lot of attention and you get a
Mhm.
lot of care, right? That's the
Mhm.
payoff. If you're a
Right.
persecutor, you generally feel superior in terms of like either intellectually or you feel like you kind of smarter than the other person. But there is definitely a payoff for each of those roles.
Okay.
So that's the bait, if you want, of how people try to trap us in this. But if you see this, if you see the bait, if you see which bait are you most vulnerable to, then that's really what it takes to step out of that and then choose something different. Step one is don't follow the steps, resist
Right.
both those invitations, and when you do, you stop the music. Suddenly, then you can choose something different. Does that make
Mm-mm.
sense?
Yeah, no, totally, totally. I mean, when I was kind of learning how to better be with the relationships that I had with my team members when I was in management, I really had to kind of what you're saying is kind of like step back and recognize kind of the consistent patterns that happen when different people came and talked to me. And so what I ended up doing, and you can totally tell me that what I did was wrong, but what I ended up doing was I really kind of took myself out of the kind of picture. And I really kind of started to look at things from an unbiased, kind of just general perspective. And so, whenever anybody came to me, well, they were there trying to play victim or, persecutor or whatever that they were coming into my office for, I really, I heard them out. I let them vent. I let them tell me what was going on. And instead of, kind of feeding the step that they wanted me to take to feed them the direction that they wanted me to go, basically dragging me onto the dance floor to dance whatever, type of dance they wanted me to dance. I kind of asked them, okay, I'm really sorry that this happened to you and that this is going on with you, but, how do you want to move forward from here? So I didn't give them any type of advice. I didn't give them any type of validation. I just said, thank you for sharing that with me. It's, I'm honored that you would entrust me with this type of information and your emotions and stuff like that. But, to move forward, how do you want to do that? And I really left it on them. And then most of the time they'd be sitting there like, well, I don't know. And things kind of start going into that direction. So yeah, I mean, your thoughts on that?
I think it's a perfect example of the steps that it sounds like you naturally just kind of did that and kind of got yourself out of it, because it's like, how do you avoid from stepping into persecutor? How do you resist this invitation? Don't
Mhm.
make them wrong for what they're feeling,
Right.
right? So
Right.
therefore it's like it's totally valid what they're feeling, right? It's totally okay for them to feel how they're feeling. Don't make them wrong
Right.
for what they're feeling. If you make them wrong, you're in persecutor and you're dancing the dance, right?
Mhm.
So even if you
Mhm.
think it's wrong, it's like you're gonna have to say, I can see how they would feel this way. I can
Right.
see how this could be a reasonable response for what they're doing. Don't make them wrong. That means you avoid the persecutor. And you did this through, validating their feelings, right? You said, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, so tell me more, right? So you're not stepping in and saying, how can I fix it for you?
Right.
Right? That's the other invitation, is the rescuer. And so that's what you did, is like, so what are you going to do about it? It's a great question because it presupposes that they have the power to do something about it.
Mm.
And that's exactly the assumption you need to make if you want to avoid rescue, right?
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, textbook, nice example.
Awesome. Oh, good. I'm glad I figured out the right process for myself.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
I mean,
it's taken us a little bit of like,
exactly. Yeah, no, it took me it took me a
experimentation.
long time
Yeah,
to figure
excellent.
that out. But no, I love how we're using dance analogies because I think that, the people who are watching and listening, if they really think about if, they're getting into some sort of a discussion with somebody that they're in a relationship with, and we're all in relationships with, all kinds of people that we meet every day or work with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But really kind of think of it in the context of you're dancing your dance, they're dancing their dance, and what kind of a dance are you going to do together? Are they going to have you follow their dance? Are you going to have them follow yours? Are you going to be dancing different things in different directions? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a helpful analogy for people to think about that in, because like I said, when I was in the midst of it, it was so confusing for me and I was like, I don't know what to do.
And I just want to say, like, I so empathize with, like, I always used to say, okay, I'm not a victim, but I get victimized by victims, because
Right.
like rescue was like my favorite, right? I'm an overgiver, so therefore rescuer is like by default the kind of thing that I used to go to. So I had to work really, really hard that's the power of the victim, right? The power of the victim
Right.
is that through like this guilt tripping and emotional kind of blackmail, they get you to give up on what you want
Right.
to do what they want, right? So actually
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
victim is 100% in charge and the rescuer is basically just a people pleaser in that way, right? And
Exactly.
when I realized that actually it was just creating these super one-sided relationships, and I was just losing so much energy. And no matter how much energy I poured into that, it just never really shifted,
Hmm.
right? Because my support was cementing the power imbalance and was continuing and supporting that assumption that they had no power. And therefore,
Right.
I was like, everything that I was pouring in there to make it better for them was reinforcing this belief that they had no power, which made me feel trapped in the giving role, which made them feel trapped in the victim role. So
Right.
it's a lose-lose situation. And that's one thing that always bothers me. Like I hate lose-lose situations. So when I
Yeah.
got that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to get out of this. And so that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there are a couple of things that we've mentioned that I kind of want to dive deeper into. So one of them is the roles of overgivers and overachievers. And then the other one that we've mentioned that I want to dive into is giving people space, like what that means. So
Mhm.
let's tackle the overgiver and overachiever first, because I know that there's people out there that are either one or the other or a combination of the two, but they might not recognize it.
Absolutely. It's so they're kind of character structures or personality types, if you want. And so these two
Mhm.
are two out of a set of five. Like this is based originally on the theories of Wilhelm Reich and then developed by Alexander Lowen. So this is like the character structures that they used to call like, oral and rigid and like very not very happy names.
Okay.
And then, I've studied this. I'm a psychotherapist by background as well as a few other things, but um, so I've kind of grouped it a little bit differently. So the overgiver is, and I'll talk about them separately. So overgiver is their core fear is abandonment, and their
Mm,
strategy to avoid this is I will be whatever you need me to be as long as you don't leave me. So the overgiver is like the shapeshifter. Like I will anticipate, like it's almost like all of our attention is out there,
mhm.
anticipating the needs of others. And our way of making ourselves safe in the world is to know those needs and to meet them. I will be the
Right.
perfect other for you. And then
Mhm.
you don't leave me. That's the bargain. And
Right.
in the
Right.
process, an overgiver often knows what everyone around them needs, but they don't know what they need themselves. And therefore, they often can feel burned out or resentful in relationships because they often don't date other overgivers. Therefore, they're often not around other people who have the superpower of knowing what you need without you saying. That's often, if
Mm,
you're an overgiver, that's your highest hope and fantasy that you finally meet someone who can do what you do for
right.
others for you. So you don't have to figure it out. Right. And
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
generally won't because that would be too easy. Right.
Right.
So that's overgivers. Overachievers are the perfectionists, right? So their bargain is a bit different. Their bargain is if I'm perfect in every way, you can't but love me, right? So
Mm,
it's a different bargain. It's similar. So that's why I often work with people who are one, the other, or a combination of. These are what I
right.
could sum up as like the net contributors. These are the people who often give more than they receive. And as a result, they often end up with a short end of the stick in their personal and often professional relationships. Like, whilst an overgiver tends to burn themselves out more emotionally and energetically, an
Mhm.
overachiever tends to often go into being like a workaholic, like tends to maybe work too, almost too much and doesn't tend to get a lot of from
Yeah.
all the incredible achievements that they have. And so those
Okay.
are the two, let's just say I have the biggest soft spot for these two groups of people because, these are the pillars of society. Like these are the people that
Yeah.
are always making sure that things get done and that other people are okay. And so I always feel like I'm kind of the person who looks after those people who are
Mm.
looking after other people. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love that. So, um, I know that we talked about that women really kind of, especially either, have these are part of these categories of overgiving and overachieving, or sometimes a combination of the two.
yeah, you can have both. And if you do, then I'm very sorry. Especially,
I
like
know.
the overachievers, often like the perfectionism comes with a super harsh inner critic. Like
Yes.
if that's who you are, often nothing you do, nothing you achieve will ever feel like it's quite good enough. And there's this kind of never quite enough in terms of achievement. There's always more to prove.
Hmm.
And so that's something that they have in common, because that's often also the overgiver tends to give too much, so tends to deplete themselves. So there's never quite enough
Yeah,
energy or enough
true.
love happening. So it's that kind of feeling. It's
Exactly.
very common. Like society encourages women specifically to step into the overgiver role. If you think
Hmm.
religions, like, what has been glorified as the feminine ideal is the unconditional, benevolent mother that is always giving without wanting anything back.
Right.
That self-sacrifice is sacred. And
Mm.
that's often what's pushed on us. So even if that's not our natural structure, we're very encouraged towards doing that. Especially in our love relationships, we're often encouraged to kind of form this because we think this is how we're meant to love. This is how we're meant to, this is how we're going to be a good partner, how we're going to be a good person.
Right, right, right. So let's talk a little bit about how having co-empowerment in your relationships, especially in your professional career, how that really can either support or hinder how effective you are as a leader in the workplace.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about this with the rescuer, and so that's often the role. Like the rescuer, especially if you're an overgiver, you tend to naturally have a strong temptation to step into the rescuer role. If
Hmm.
you're an overachiever, you tend to split yourself between the persecutor and the rescuer. Like you have a super harsh inner critic, so therefore that's easy for
Right.
you, but
Yeah.
you also often step in to save the bacon. So you tend to do both of those. Um, yeah, so that's the correlation between those kind of those types. And so again, like how, like we talk, like how if you step into the rescuer role, you're actually pushing the other person into victim. You're kind of leaving a victim shaped space. Like if
Hmm.
there's like, if you're here and I'm here, this is the space between us. So the
Right.
question is, how much of the space, like how far do I come towards you to meet you? Am I trying to meet you here, or am I trying to meet you here?
Hmm.
Right. And that's, if I'm meeting you here, there's absolutely no room for you to grow towards me.
Yes.
That's the rescuer. And therefore, the rescuer disempowers. So if you have a rescuing leadership style, your employees will stay where they are. They will stay in, you're empowering them to stay in victim mode, and they know they don't have to move or grow.
Mm.
Now, the difference in co-empowering leadership is I say, okay, I'll meet you here.
Right.
And on top of this is I meet you here because I believe that you've got what it takes. I know
Mhm.
you've got the power to do this, and I'm inviting you to come meet me here.
Right.
Right? Like I know you've got it, and I'm just, really wanting you to find that inside yourself so you can meet me here as an equal.
Hmm.
It's resist the temptation to lean in further.
Right. Right.
Right? So you have to be here in the middle, and you have to make it clear like where you want the other person to meet you. So that's your requirements or your request. What is it going to take for us to tango? What do I need from you to make this an equal dance? So
Right.
that's the other component of it. If you're a leader, it's clear requirements. What am I expecting from you?
Hmm.
And then like if you can do it, great. If you can't do it, that's fine. But it's like, then what's the plan to get you to the place where you can? Like
Right.
that's then, that's always the objective, is we meet here in the middle. one empowered person and another empowered person meeting here as equals. That's what co-empowerment means, right? It means I can't cross over this boundary and trying to kind of do more than my fair share. The more I do more than my fair share, the less room I give you to develop your personal power.
Right.
And that's why often overgivers and overachievers tend to end up with people who are more in that victim type energy when we're in codependence, because we're willing to step in, right? So therefore, if we're willing to kind of like meet people who don't have anything to give, that's the people who find us.
No, yeah, that's
Right?
true.
It's like the people who find us are the people who need us, not the people who can meet us. Right?
I
Does that
like
make
that.
sense?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that motto. So, I mean, I know that, when I really struggled with this when I first started to have to delegate things to people.
Mhm.
And my perfectionist really, started to get in the way because, I was like, oh, that they're not going to do that task the way that I do it. And it's not going to be right. And, it's going to cause more problems. And so, anyways, super hard for me to start delegating to my different staff members. But I love how you illustrated that we really need to give them space, to give them room to grow and start to grow into their potential of what they're capable of
Mhm.
actually doing, and also continue to grow and improve and make progress from there. Because if we don't step back and again, from a management standpoint, is stop micromanaging, just step back and give your people space, they will actually, first of all, you're empowering them, letting them
Mhm.
know, hey, I believe in, like you're saying, I believe in you, I trust you, you can do this. And stepping back and then letting them really grow into that space that you're giving them, but you have to be willing to give them that space, which can be
Right.
super hard when you have the responsibility of processes going right and having to meet company expectations and stuff like that. But that's really what it takes, is really letting go and stepping back.
And the key for this, and I found this in personal relationships, but also in professional relationships, key one is you have to hire the right person who
Right.
actually has what you're looking for. So
Hmm.
therefore, it's like, I talk in my models about different levels of development where people are at, right? And so level 1 and level 2 are codependent levels, right?
Right.
And from level 3, 4, and 5, like that's where even co-empowerment even becomes possible. And
Mm.
so it's about like, okay, so what is the criteria? Like when I, teach people about who should they choose to date, like as a soulmate worthy kind of candidate, if you want, right? It's
Hmm.
very much the same as if you're hiring for an employee, right? The
Yes.
same criteria. And I would say, okay, you don't touch anyone who's not at least an aspiring queen or an aspiring king, right?
Hmm.
What is the defining criteria for this? It's someone who takes responsibility for their own actions and their
Yeah.
own outcomes. And someone that, when they understand that something isn't right, is willing to take action and actually takes action to make it different.
Mm.
That's someone you can lead towards and you can coach and you can empower towards this, because when they have the right guidance and the right resources, people who have that attitude are going to be growing towards that.
Right.
That's the only place where that's really becoming possible. If you have someone who is not ready to kind of take action to make something different, like, you know what, then they're only going to talk about it. They're going to talk about what they're going to do differently, etc. So it's like, what are people doing? So if you have someone who, once they realize something isn't how it should be, they're taking action to make it different, you're on
Right.
to a winner. This is a person that you can lead towards the water. This is
Hmm.
someone you can lead into their fully empowered place, their king or their queen. If they're not, if they're just complaining about how everybody else is preventing them from doing this, like, is they're not taking this accountability, this responsibility, that's not going to work, because it's the
Right.
actions that bridge the gap. If
Hmm.
someone isn't where they need to be, it's them taking actions that's bridging the gap. If they're not willing to take actions or unable to do that, then that means they're not having that empowerment mindset. So that's the criteria that I have for, if you want to date someone, you got to find someone who is at least at that level of development. If you want to hire someone, you got to find someone who's at that level of development. And then co-empowerment becomes possible from there.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Dating
Oh, yeah, totally.
and leading is actually like incredibly, like it's exactly the same skills.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Right? So it's quite funny.
It is, yeah, and then I recognized that after I got out of, corporate and like, oh, leading isn't just for the workplace, it's actually everywhere in your life. So yeah, no, I totally see the same similarity with relationships. We have relationships in our professional career and our personal lives, and really how you handle them is really the same. So the success
Yeah.
roadmap is the same.
And like I said, like if you're stepping into rescuer or victim or persecutor, you're leading, right? Like you're leading, but you're leading into codependence,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, like how do you actually lead into co-empowerment is by you have to the clear requirements. What is it going to take for you to win? Right? Like I'm stepping here. What is it going to take? Like, what does this look like where I want you to meet me? Like, what does good enough look like?
Yes.
Clear kind of criteria and like a clear definition of how to win and what it takes.
Yes.
And then like, if there's something missing, that's fine. You can empower with knowledge or with support, but the actions you can't take for the other person. You empower them with knowledge. You can empower them with resources. You cannot take the action for them.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the perfectionism, like there's a great quote from Dan Martell, which I live by, which says, like something done by someone else to 80% is 100% awesome. Right?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
I love
because
that.
you can't ultimately grow and do everything yourself without losing your sanity.
Right.
Personally, I'm quite attached to my sanity and to my quality of life. So therefore, other people are not going to get it to your standards. That's, it's not their business, right? Like they're not,
Right.
if you're the leader of a department, you've got someone who's, you're more attached. You likely get more money, you get more incentive for the support. They're not going to care as much as you do, right?
Mhm.
That's right. But they're going to get to 80%. And someone doing something to 80% where you just have to like do a little polish on top of it, that saved you a lot of time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it's
definitely.
that kind of idea. It's like, if you think, oh, other people should be getting to my 100%, it's very easy to step into the persecutor, right? Or step into the
Very true.
rescuer, like, oh, they can't do it, so I'll just do it myself, right?
Yep.
So it's like, it's those little traps, right? Like that are kind of everywhere, just to kind of spot them and just resist them.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, the motto that I had to come up for myself as a recovering perfectionist is done is good enough, and you will never hit perfection. It's just unattainable for, a perfectionist. So yeah, that is what I
Absolutely.
have learned. So one of the things that I do want to touch on is how important is self-awareness in being able to create co-empowerment in your relationships.
I mean, it's crucial because if you're not aware if what patterns you're running, like if you're not aware, you're going to be in codependence, right?
Mhm.
Because that's the default. You first have to see the dance to actually like realize, oh, I'm actually dancing right now. That is like being aware of it to be able to change it. So
Right.
that's super crucial. So like, following shows like yours or, educating yourself on some of those patterns, it's really to help you recognize those temptations and those invitations. And when someone tries to lead you up the garden path and you're like,
Right.
oh yeah, I'm feeling pulled. I'm feeling pulled into this. And it's like, oh, but track what happens when you follow it. And often when you follow a codependent invitation, you lose energy
Mhm.
and the relationship deteriorates and the overall outcome will be diminished,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
therefore, it's like you don't expect yourself to do it perfectly every time. Just be curious and notice. Like ultimately, we want you to do what works, right? Like if codependence worked for us, like great, go ahead, right? Like why not? But it
Yeah.
doesn't. Like, you lose energy. It's lose relationships. So
Mhm.
therefore, it's like it's being curious and playful and saying, okay, so I'm resisting this. I'm resisting this. I'm just going to try this and see what happens. And
Right.
as long as you try something else, you're gonna, this is how you create your library, and it becomes more like a dance, like a playful dance that's enjoyable
Mhm.
rather than this kind of, yeah, this kind of floundering about that often happens. Yeah. So
Right.
absolutely is key.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you make a great point that, our bodies communicate to us when something's not right. So really just kind of tuning in and like you
Mhm.
were saying, you know, codependency drains your energy. Or if you are in a situation where, you're kind of feeling frustrated or angry, any kind of negative emotion that comes
Mhm.
up that just you don't feel right, then that is, your mind and emotions trying to tell you something about that situation. So really just being open to really listening to that and exploring, okay, what does that mean?
Absolutely. And you big key, if you're like an overgiver, if you identify with this, like resentment is gonna be a really good
Right.
teacher for you. If you're feeling
Exactly.
resentful or you're feeling depleted and like exhausted, it means you've been giving things that haven't fed you back. That means you've been giving from self-sacrifice, and that means most likely that will have been in codependence. Right? If you're an overachiever, it's often that kind of judgment, that self-judgment, that is
Mhm.
often the kind of the big energy sapper where you're feeling like, okay, like I'm still striving and I'm never done.
Right.
Like, you know what, I achieved this and I'm not stopping to celebrate, but there's the next thing and the next thing. And it's this whole idea, once I get there, I'll be happy. And then you get there, and then it's like the milestone, the goalpost always
Yeah, it
moves.
moves. Yep.
And right, so it always moves. So if that's what you're noticing about yourself, then yeah, overachiever is definitely in your makeup.
Exactly. All right. This has been amazing, Cassandra. Thank you so much. So can you we have your website on the screen right now, but can you tell the people where they can find you, like on social media, if they want to follow you for some more of these amazing nuggets of wisdom?
Well, I mean, the website that you've got here, Dating Like a Goddess, that's my more kind of like dating related website, but there's my contact information there. So please reach out if you are interested more in kind of like leadership advice. And there also are links to, regular webinars that I do about specifically helping overgivers and overachievers to transform like that kind of more self-sacrifice, perfectionism type relationship into relationships that actually work and empower and that are good for them and good for the people around them. So yeah, I'd be delighted to hear from you. And thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so important, and I think you have some amazing, nuggets of wisdom that you share from your experience and from your learning. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying up late and being with us. So please go get some sleep.
Will do. Thank you so much, Angilie. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks. Bye bye. Now, I am so excited to announce the launch of our new premier transformational coaching experience called the Meant to Lead. So, unlike traditional career management and leadership development programs, Meant to Lead emphasizes internal growth and self leadership as the cornerstone of effective leadership and career growth. So, I've spent the last 2 years meticulously crafting Meant to Lead, drawing from the insights I've gained from my own journey as well as from guiding others. Central to the program are four components, which I've identified as being crucial for personal transformation: a proven strategy and process, acquiring the proper tools, having the right guidance, and being in an environment conducive for growth and success. So, participants of our mentally transformational experiences will embark on a transformative journey, discovering their inner phenomenal leader and learning to lead themselves to success and fulfillment. My philosophy is grounded in the belief that effective leadership stems from mastering self leadership and tapping into one's extraordinary power. So don't miss this opportunity to unlock your fullest potential. Go to our website now for more information. Now, there are a couple of observances during the month of May that I think are pretty important, and I want to mention them to you today. So, the first is that May is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which recognizes the contributions and the influences of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. Now, I am Asian American myself, and I and my two brothers are actually more than half Filipino, as our mom is originally from the Philippines. So I personally have a connection to this month of celebration. I also think that it's important to recognize, celebrate, and learn from our different heritages because doing so allows us to fully embrace and embody our true, authentic selves. Understanding our roots helps us gain a sense of self awareness and self love that is crucial to our overall well being. Now, when we connect with our heritage, it gives us a greater sense of belonging and a deeper understanding of where we come from. Furthermore, embracing our heritage gives us the strength to be confident and proud of who we are, ultimately leading to us becoming phenomenal leaders in our own right. Celebrating our differences allows us to not only appreciate one another, but also respect and learn from each other's beliefs, traditions, and perspectives. Now, this in turn fosters a greater sense of unity and understanding in our communities and the world as a whole. Therefore, recognizing and celebrating our different heritages is essential for promoting diversity, inclusivity, and ultimately creating a harmonious society. Now, May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, because mental health is super important, I wanted to be sure to mention this as well. This monthly observation started in 1949. Mental Health Awareness Month has been a cornerstone of addressing the challenges faced by millions of Americans living with mental health conditions. In fact, data shows that one in every five adults in the US experiences mental health illness every year, but only about half receive treatment. Now, this month of May is dedicated to eradicating the stigma, extending support, and fostering public education and advocating for policies that prioritize the well being of individuals and families affected by mental health. Okay, now it's been a few weeks since we talked about this show segment, Stepping into Your Power, a self leadership reflection journal prompt, where we explore what it means to be a leader to first yourself and identify areas in your life where you can step into your power. Now, these journaling prompts are simple but powerful and are meant to encourage you to take some time to sit down, reflect, and thoroughly think about things to help you create self awareness and consciousness. Taking ownership of your life and your choices is the first step towards recognizing and embodying your inner phenomenal leader and creating the life that you desire. Now, for this segment today, because we just started a new month, the month of May, just a few days ago, I got this tingle, if you will, that my monthly reflection exercise is something that I should share with you today. So, just to give you a bit of a background, I've been doing some fierce intentional goal setting for a few years now. I think it was about 6 years ago where I found myself at a New Year's Eve party, not interested in partying at all, but really contemplating and reflecting on the fact that I didn't want the new year at the time to just be another rinse and repeat year. Or a year where I was just subject to what others and life threw at me throughout the year. So that was my first step on my path of practicing intentional goal setting ever since. Now, let me tell you, my intentional goal setting practice has expanded and gotten much more intense over the years. But one thing that I added to my practice a couple of years ago, which I want to share with you today, is a monthly reflection exercise that I do with my goals. But firstly, let's define what intentional goal setting actually is. So, how is intentional goal setting different from just plain old goal setting, you might be wondering. Well, if you're anything like I was a few years ago, I had sort of this generalized idea about goals and goal setting. I knew that goals kept us challenged, motivated, and inspired. I also knew that sometimes I set goals that I forgot about and then would be like, oh, yeah, I did want to do that, or something along those lines. I've since learned that goals, having a vision, a mission, and knowing your values will help you set your destination, create a path, a road to what you want, instead of just continuing to be at the mercy of the world and just walking blindly through life. When you regularly reflect and pursue your wants, your goals in a structured way, you are creating the life that you desire and are truly meant to live. You're no longer letting others or circumstances dictate the life that you have. Does that make sense? Now, my monthly reflection goal setting exercise that I want to share with you today is where I spend some time every first of every month reflecting on how my past month went, what I was able to accomplish in the past month, and setting goals to work on accomplishing for the next month. So, specifically in my journal are these sections for when I do this. So, goal reflection from the previous month. In this case, I just reflected on this past April. Also, goal analysis for the previous month, where I go through the goals list I had and analyze how I did in accomplishing those goals. And then lastly, goals for the month. So in this case, for May, I list in detail what I'm hoping to accomplish in the new month and then create smaller steps that I can do and milestones throughout the month in order for me to make sure that I accomplish them. Now, my new challenge for you is to give this monthly goal reflection exercise a try. It's still early in May, so this is something that you can start doing this month. I hope that you'll take me up on my challenge, and I'm excited to hear how it goes for you. All right. And there you have it, my amazing, phenomenal leader. As this episode of Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor comes to a close, I want to thank my guest again, the Soulmate Alchemist, Cassandra de la Thea. I want to thank her again for joining us on the show today and for sharing her incredible knowledge and insights with us on how the different ways in which relationships can either support or hinder our leadership potential. And also thank you, beautiful soul, for being here with us today as well. Remember, like I always say, I don't believe in coincidences, and you, bright light, were meant to be here today to receive whatever message you were meant to receive from this episode. So keep showing up, keep loving on yourself, and keep making progress on your journey to becoming the phenomenal leader that I know you truly are. Now, be sure to join me next week as we'll be exploring another amazing topic with our special guest, business and life strategist, Tanya Diamond. She'll be here with us on the show next week to explore how loving yourself leads to powerful leadership. Now, I've already had an interview discussion with Tanya, and I can tell you she has so many incredible nuggets of wisdom to share. So trust me, it'll be another conversation that you won't want to miss. So be sure to set your reminders to be back here with me next Monday, May 13th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. All right, my beautiful, phenomenal leader, have a great week, and I will see you next Monday. Take care. Coming up next week on Take the Lead, a consciousness movement with Angilie Kapoor. Guest Tanya Diamond is here to discuss the importance of self-love and effective leadership. Don't miss next week's episode on E360 TV.